The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're gonna love it.
Okay, let's go.
All right, so if it was any other year, let's say if it was 2017, 2018, I'd start out with you telling some jokes because I'm blessed to have a actually funny comedian on the Deep Shallow Dive. But because this world is such a fucking shit show, we really can't start off like that. And instead, we're going to start off, really talking about, something that is incredibly serious. All right, listen, everybody. Jonathan Randall. This is somebody you guys might recognize if you spend a lot of time on Instagram. He is actually very funny comedian, but I didn't discover him because of his jokes. I discovered him because of, and it's going on almost a year and a half now, because of his activism when it comes to the situation going on in Gaza between Israel and the Palestinians. And I'll tell you why I gravitated to Jonathan even more than maybe some others is because he's Jewish, and he's a Jewish American and a proud Jewish American, like somebody who actually loves his religion, loves Judaism, embraces it. And when I first saw some of his clips, I was like, man, this guy's got some guts. I actually thought this guy's got some balls to basically be talking against Israel. And then I realized it wasn't really talking against Judaism. He's talking against Zionism. And so welcome, man. Sorry it's taken this long, but I'm really glad to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Good to be here,
Absolutely.
Ray.
Well, let's really start off with that. I mean, from your perspective, help us first of all understand the difference between Zionism and Judaism. Yeah, let's start there.
When it comes down to it, I mean, it's like Judaism is an ancient religion that's thousands and thousands of years old, and Zionism is more of a modern political ideology. So that's really the difference. Zionism likes to say that it's tied to Judaism because, Zionists now like to claim that it has to do with, self-determination in the ancestral homeland. But the truth is Judaism exists without Zionism. There's nowhere in Judaism that it says that the Jewish people need to have their own sovereign nation and they could expel and murder as many people as possible.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that, that's one of the many discussion points that are happening right now. And so for someone like you, have you always sort of been involved in maybe activism against Zionism or in support of the Palestinian people? Or was it what happened on October 7th, and then really what's happened since October 7th that just, made you want to speak out?
It wasn't, I haven't always been involved, and it wasn't just since the 7th. I guess I've really been, vocally advocating for Palestinian human rights, since about 2020,
Wow.
2019 is when I really started it. And just, to say one more thing about, to differentiate Judaism and Zionism, Judaism really is a religion that's based around a foundation of the 10 Commandments, which, we're a lot of familiar with. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not worship any other God above me. And Zionism kind of is, kill, steal, worship the state of Israel above all other things. So it's kind of in direct, conflict with Judaism. But as it comes to my advocacy, I was raised an Orthodox Jew in Miami, Florida, been to Israel on 3 separate occasions. I was, brought up to love Israel, to, believe in this dream of Israel, or, perhaps people could even call it the dream of Zionism, which I think is, an issue right now because a lot of Jewish people that are against what's happening with the Palestinians still will consider themselves a Zionist because they believe in this dream.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the dream is not a reality. So what really, I guess happened in my journey, going from somebody who was kind of, brought up to believe that, all Palestinians were less than human and they wanted to murder me just because I was Jewish.
I mean, is that real?
To
Is that
realize,
really like you really remember being told something that harsh, like as a kid, like all Palestinians want to murder you, like literally that visceral?
yes, pretty much. They're all terrorists who want Jews dead and they want to wipe Jews off the face of the
Wow,
earth.
that's crazy. Did you go on your Birthright trip? Is that something that is Birthright, right?
Yes, that is, like I mentioned, been to Israel on multiple occasions. One of the occasions was going on the Birthright trip. I went on the Birthright March of the Living. So prior to going to Israel, we went to Poland. We marched from Auschwitz to Birkenau. We went to the camp, saw all that, and then went to Israel. So it was really, while it was an experience, I believe strongly that the Holocaust happened and stuff like that. It was a lot of propaganda going straight from Auschwitz to Israel.
Okay, got it, got it. Okay. Okay, so you started kind of, I guess, maybe talking about this in 2020. That's interesting. Are there, and you're in New York, what is the vibe of Jewish Americans in New York in terms of this situation? Is it split? I mean, I know there's guys like you, and then on the flip side, you've got guys like Michael Rappaport or Rabbi Shmuley, and the ones that are truly Deborah Messing. I love the eye roll. Deborah Messing, all those people that really, again, I mean, listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion and their stance, but getting back to what you said earlier about Judaism being founded on the 10 commandments and thou shalt not kill being, I think, the first one or the second one, I guess it's hard for me as an outsider to even understand how anybody could look at what we've looked at on our phones for 20 months and just the children in particular. How does anybody look at that and just not be horrified and be like, okay, you know what? Let's stop this and let's talk about it and fix it. Like, I mean, what do you think? Like, what do
Absolutely. It's mind blowing and it makes no sense because it's there for everyone to see. It's so frustrating for me now, to hear people be like, no one's starving. There is no starvation in Gaza. And it's like, what are you talking about? How can you exist in this world with all the knowledge that is accessible at our fingertips and believe this? And how could you want to be a representative of this beautiful ancient religion and stand on the side of people that are committing these atrocities, committing the genocide in Gaza, that are allowing the starvation to take place? I don't know. I don't know how people are able to do it. I know that there are some people that are just so brainwashed that the indoctrination has been so strong they can't get past that. There are people that are so fearful that are having their fear be manipulated. But then there are people that, should know better, like some of the names that, you mentioned, that just are on the wrong side of history and are kind of, caught up in something that they don't really realize or understand, or are being manipulated. We mentioned the 10 commandments, and an analogy I like to use is that Israel is the modern day golden calf. When Moses went up to get the 10 commandments, the first time he came down, it took him too long. Some of the people got restless. They created this golden calf. They started worshiping it. Moses came down with this was horrible. Of course, they couldn't be doing this. He ended up breaking the commandments, and these people all got punished. And I believe the same thing is happening right now, but it's the state of Israel. And so many Jewish people are so busy worshiping this modern golden calf that they don't realize that what they're doing is actually against the values of Judaism and against the religion of Judaism. Because let's be honest, it just doesn't make sense what's happening in
yeah.
Israel. And for you to call yourself a Jewish person and stand by while these thousands and thousands of people, women, children, and men, are being killed, being starved, being forcibly evicted from their homes. Like, that isn't not the Jewish way at all. If anything, not only because of the experiences that Jewish people had, like in the Holocaust, that we should make sure that this isn't happening to anyone else. I mean, I was brought up never again means never again for anybody,
Yeah.
not never again means never again, only for the Jews. So it's a little crazy, but also like on a religious level, the Jews are supposed to be the light of the world. The Jews have concepts like tikkun olam, repairing the world, bringing light to the world. Like that's what, the Jewish people should be doing. The Holy Land, whatever name you want to call it, is people have a strong connection to it from all religions.
Right.
It should be a place where everybody could practice their religion and live freely and peace and harmony. And Jewish people should be the stewards of this,
Right.
making sure that this happens, not the opposite, which is happening right now, which we're seeing is the perversion of Judaism and the corruption of it.
No, I mean, absolutely. You said that all incredibly well. So let me ask you, man, like, do you take just so much heat? Like from your family? Is your family like, are they on board with you, or are they like, oh my God, what are you doing? You're an idiot. Your friends, other Jewish people in New York City. And then I want to talk about like, your work. Like I know it's affect your comedy stuff because I've seen you post things to where you've gotten shows canceled on you and things like that. But let's start off with like how has this been with your family and where do they net out on it?
It hasn't been easy with family. There are, of course, family members that wrote me off right away. And first of all, I want to mention that, like I mentioned, I've been advocating, for Palestinian human rights for some time.
Yeah.
And it seemed that prior to 10/7, people were tolerating it.
Got it.
Some people weren't too crazy about it. Some people be like, Jonathan, like, why? What are you doing? Like, what's going on? But people, for the most part, were like, okay, after 10/7, there was a shift where people really became like, we'll never talk to you again. This is horrible. Like some people even would go so far as you have a part to play in this
Wow.
because you riled up, anti-Israel sentiment and hatred, and that's part of it. And after 10/7, I have a brother who won't talk to me. I have other family members who won't talk to me, who've sent me horrible messages and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for a number of reasons. Of course, it's always sad when, a family member and someone you love and you care about wants to cut you off and doesn't want to talk to you. But then there's also the flip side of which is really sad and depressing to think that like this person that you cared about and you love and you respected is siding with genociders, siding with, people that I think are evil, and to such a degree that because I'm criticizing, because I'm bringing light to well-documented violations of human rights, like that is so triggering to them that they want to cut me off. Because if you look at my advocacy, a lot of it really started coming from a place of trying to wake Jewish people up,
Right.
trying to at the time I wanted to almost be like, hey, save Israel. Like, hey, like Israel better get its shit together now because things are only going to get worse, which they have gotten really worse. And I think globally, the perception of Israel and the feelings for Israel are, at an all-time low and worse than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And it's only going to keep getting that way. And it's like there's this cognitive disconnect, which is crazy, where like too many Jewish people don't understand, as long as we're associated with apartheid, with ethnic cleansing, with genocide, not only is Israel not going to be safe, but Jewish people aren't going to be safe. And like this isn't a good look. It's like we're not going to bomb our way into making people like us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely not going to bomb your way into making people like you or kill your way into making people like you. Man, your own brother who you had a good relationship with up until, let's say, the past, I guess, maybe even 2 years? Really?
After 10/7, things, I guess, I don't know. It was just too much. And there are so many other people that I grew up with who are just so upset. And that is something that I have noticed, which when it comes from a white Jewish person, it really upsets people a little bit more
Yeah.
for some reason.
Yeah.
I've seen, even with comedy, I've done shows where I've seen people of color talk about this. And, the audience seems to be okay with it. And once I start talking about it, it just enrages people. It's like, this is what you're using your privilege for. Like, you don't have your privilege for this. It really pisses people off. And, people call me, oh, get Jonathan to stop. And, friends just be like, other people are telling me that I shouldn't talk to you because you're doing this stuff.
Wow.
And it's like, it's really crazy, like the venom that people will have, like they will want to destroy you, which, are, again, you mentioned career things, and there are people that want to just go out and destroy the careers of people that are advocating for Palestinian human rights. And that's another thing that's like against Judaism.
Yeah.
Like in
Yeah.
Judaism, it's like costing somebody their livelihood is akin to taking their lives. Like
Okay.
it's against it, but people don't really seem to care about, the Torah, about the values of Judaism. They're obsessed with nationalism.
Mm.
And that's kind of what Zionism has done. And, my theory is Zionism is a tool of imperialists and anti Semites and evangelical Christians who are using and manipulating the Jews, who, like I said, are too busy worshiping their golden calf to realize it.
No, absolutely. And that correlation with evangelical Christians and the tie with, like, man, some of these pastors that I see, like, I don't know if you know these guys, but like Jonathan Hagee, Kenneth Copeland, who else? Franklin Graham, Paula White, the lady Trump brought in as his spiritual advisor. I mean, I watch the stuff they put out and it's just insane. Like, it's insane. But there are millions of Christians in the United States that are following that. And a lot of that, I mean, man, man, there's so much to that with the Schofield Bible and this concept of dispensationalism and all that, which we won't get into that today. But man, I'm really sorry to hear about the work related stuff too. And I remember seeing a couple posts from you where you got shows canceled on you because of certain things. What's interesting is what I started out saying, what gravitated me toward your content was the fact that you are Jewish and you're speaking up about this. In my opinion, that just hits so much harder and there's so much more credibility coming from you. I never thought about the flip side of then you getting, I guess, bombarded even more because you're Jewish. And what you said earlier about, almost like if it's a black comedian or a white comedian or an Indian or whatever comedian talking about it, maybe it's tolerated better. But the fact that it's a Jewish comedian talking about it, it's not tolerated better. That's pretty wild, man. That's pretty wild. All right.
No, it's weird. Yeah, for sure. One of the shows that I got canceled. There's a video that went viral of me, getting assaulted, and I had previously done a show at that establishment, and there were a lot of, people talking about Palestine, and they honestly they weren't even getting laughs
Mm.
with the way they were presenting, their jokes, and it didn't seem to be an issue for the club owner. And then once I got up there and I started getting laughs, and the way I'm talking about it, and the audience responding positive towards me, we saw what happened towards me. They canceled my show. The guy put his hands on. So it is a strange thing, And I was at a show not too long ago when I was talking about it, and Jewish people got very upset, and they said that they like, coming from you, another Jewish person, it just is a lot to take in. It's too much to handle. And it's like, that's my whole spiel. Because I wanted to become a Jewish person because I'm trying to wake up these other Jewish people to realize that what is being done in our name isn't right. What is happening isn't right. And, when I make my videos, like a lot of times I'm making it for them. I'm making it for these other Jewish people to try to hopefully, and some people I have gotten through to, I have gotten some great messages. Those have been the most rewarding from other Jewish people that are like, wow, we saw your videos and some other people's videos and went and did some research, and we really realized what's happening, or your videos gave me the courage to speak up against my family. And that's what we have to do. That's what it means to be Jewish. And it's just so ridiculous. I get it. People love Israel. They were brought up to love Israel. They've been indoctrinated to love Israel. And even maybe beyond the indoctrination, they went to Israel. They had a great experience. They have love for it. They want Jews to have a homeland. Okay, that's great. But like, you got to admit that like, this isn't the dream of Israel. This isn't, what you want in your heart it to be. It's become a rogue state. And your silence isn't helping Israel. It's not helping the Jewish people. It's just making more Jewish people complicit in the crimes of this state that is currently being controlled by terrorists and criminals. like in their own merits in Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu on trial, bribery, fraud, breach of trust. Itamar Ben-Gvir, what a minister of national security, was convicted in Israel for inciting racism and supporting terrorism. Bezalel Smotrich, their finance minister, he has been arrested for suspicions of planting bombs. He's not only an illegal settler, he went outside the settlement and took his own land, his own Palestinian land. Like, these are not good people. It's like,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
calls coming from inside the house.
Yeah, I love that, man. The calls coming from inside the house. Have you watched that BB Files? It's a documentary called the BB Files. Have you seen that or heard about that? Okay, I haven't watched that. What about there was another documentary I watched which was very enlightening for me. Israelism or Israelism. I don't know how they pronounce it.
Sure, Israelism,
Yeah.
I've seen that. That's great. And, I think that is a movement that we've seen more and more. Of course, Simone, one of the people that,
Yeah.
is featured in Israelism as one of the founders, if not now, an organization, made up of Jewish people who are saying, like, not in our name. We have to come together. We have to speak up. What's happening? We've been lied to, and what's happening isn't right and doesn't represent the values of Judaism and isn't who we want to be.
Right.
Everyone's crying and complaining, anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism exists. It's a real thing. But what Israel has done is it's made it virtually meaningless because it's made, any criticism of it considered anti-Semitism. It's labeled all its critics anti-Semites, and it's like the boy who cried anti-Semitism.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. I think without them realizing, they've really watered down the meaning of that to their detriment. That If Not Now organization, they seem like they've gotten some traction, and that I didn't know that's all Jewish people. It's pretty much all Jewish people that are part of that.
Yeah, it's all Jewish people. And, I think all Jewish people should be watching Israelism because
Yeah.
all Jewish people had this experience and a lot of them don't realize it. And a lot of them, like, don't want to because, a lot of Jews just were brought up, loving Israel. Israel's great. Israel's, the safest place for Jews, which isn't true. I mean, it's not hard to realize that Israel is literally the most dangerous place for Jewish people in the world and puts Jews everywhere in danger. But that's what people were ingrained to believe. And oh, maybe they went there for the bar mitzvah, or maybe they just went on Birthright and they had an amazing trip for 2 weeks and they have all this, great feelings about Israel, and they were fed a bunch of lies about Israel. But when they start hearing the reality and finding out the reality, or if they're lucky, get to go experience them themselves, like Simone and Israelism did, going to Palestine and talking to Palestinians and understanding that what they've been told just isn't true.
Yeah, that's fascinating. But man, it's like, again, as an outsider, I've said this 100 times in practically every interview that I've talked about. It's like, I don't necessarily have skin in that game. I'm not Palestinian, I'm not Jewish, but I'm a human being. And the way I look at everything is truly through that lens of a human being. And then I do role reversal a lot. Like, I think to myself, okay, if the roles were reversed right now, and this was Hamas or any organization that was Palestinian led, and they were just bombarding Israel and killing Israeli children and killing Israeli women and destroying the infrastructure of Tel Aviv and all the amazing cities that are there, I'd be going just as crazy. Like, to me, it has nothing to do with, the country, the religion, or anything. It's purely a humanitarian look. And I know you feel that same way. God, it's so wild, like, how we are so divided, or there is a division on this. It's kind of like the Epstein files right now. Like, to me, the Epstein files, I'm like, it's pedophilia. What are we arguing about? Like, there are people that did really bad stuff to underage girls. How is anybody on that side? It just doesn't make sense.
No, absolutely. It doesn't make sense, any of it at all. And, people think that they're connected.
Yeah, yeah. Do you go, I mean, New York City's a hotbed of, activism and the protesting and all that. Like, do you take part in that stuff or do you not go into that?
I mean, yes, I've been to, a number of protests here in the city, but, I participate in them. But, I feel like most of my advocacy has been, short form content on social media. But yeah, I've been to a bunch of them. I never felt unsafe as
Okay.
a Jewish person at any of them. I've met some lovely people at all of them that I've been to. The only scary parts for me have been the Zionists that have been there at different, protests. At one protest, I was at a cultural protest. It was one of the most beautiful protests I've ever been a part of. And it was a bunch of artists and there was singing and dancing. And there were just these vile Zionists chasing us around with the bullhorn, just screaming the most vile, disgusting things that just like had nothing to do with anything. The protests were about, again, ending the suffering of the Palestinian people, ending the violations, not turning this into, you're all Hamas supporters who, sexually assault everybody. And that's what these Zionists were. And the intimidation factor that they gave, it was just horrible. You could only imagine what it's like for the Palestinian people in the West Bank and how intimidated they are,
Yeah.
and how, these people come and they're intimidating our protests, like they are intimidating them off their land, stealing their, their livestock, murdering them. An American was just killed, beat to death not too long ago by settlers. And that's what's happening. And you see them there. And I've seen that it's just been very scary to see them, and, the hatred and their attitudes and the ugliness. And it's just like, we're speaking up against violence. We're speaking up against the genocide that's happening right now. And they're bringing, just such incredible hatred. It's just crazy. With a little bit of victimhood, like, they're the ones put in some sort of bad position or danger.
Yeah, yeah. The stuff in the West Bank, I mean, people aren't even really that aware of what's going on there. And it's crazy. In my research, I've always I've always felt like the West Bank is the crown jewel. Like that's really what guys like Ben Gvir and Smoltrich and even Netanyahu, they really want the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, from what I understand, the actual terms are in terms of what they refer to it as. But I feel like that's what they really want. They want full control and get rid of all the Palestinians in the West Bank. And to me, I always think like, man, is Gaza the appetizer for that? Or is Gaza the distraction while they're basically doing what they're doing, expanding settlements, just causing tremendous violence in order to get the West Bank? It's like everybody's paying attention here, and then over here is just, berserk.
No, absolutely. And, it's just such a, the fallacy of Hamas is just so clearly on display in the West Bank, was how they want to blame everything on
Yeah.
Hamas, while Hamas isn't controlling the West Bank. And they are, constantly bulldozing homes, raiding homes in the West Bank. They talk about hostages and returning the hostages. They have taken thousands of hostages, just breaking into people's homes in the West Bank in the middle of the night and dragging them from their homes for no reason, bringing them into administrative detention, not having them have a trial, not having them even know
Yeah.
what they were taken for. And this is happening. I believe I saw just a headline today that, Israel's talking more about annexing all of the West Bank. We know Miriam Adelson gave Trump like $100 million to annex all of the West Bank. And we're seeing it happen. And we're seeing these violent settlers, from the horrible thing that happened with the 20-year-old American
Yeah.
from Tampa,
Yeah, I
Florida,
saw that.
who was killed a couple years ago. It was an American journalist, Shirin Abu Akleh, that was killed. There was an American Turkish protester that was killed not too long ago. Of course, always they're like, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. Anytime, they do something wrong, it's a mistake. And hell, they do a lot of mistakes. But they are committing atrocity, and they are making life very uncomfortable. Saying making it very uncomfortable is putting it
Yeah.
extremely
Yeah.
nicely, okay? Because it's like, it's a living hell, and you're like, how could it be even a living hell when you see Gaza, which looks exactly like hell on earth? But it is. It's never knowing when soldiers are going to break into your house and kidnap you. It's not knowing if your home is going to be there tomorrow. It's not knowing if settlers are going to burn it, if they're going to commit violence. It's not knowing what is going to happen. It's living in this kind of purgatory because they do want that land and they intend to take all of it.
No, I hear you on all the stuff in the West Bank. And again, I honestly, I think so much of that is by design. And it really does make me think, was Gaza done to, divert attention and play this out for 1, 2, 3, 4, however many years it's going to take in order for them to accomplish what they want to accomplish on the West Bank? A lot of it just comes down to Netanyahu right now. And I will tell you, like, he's really public enemy number one to a majority of the world. I don't know if you saw, he just went on the Nelk Boys podcast, which was such a goofy fit, and he got murdered. I mean, the clips that went out just absolutely, there was one clip that went out and I think it had 157,000 thumbs down and like 1,000 thumbs up, something like that. And then the Nelk Boys took a beating from that. But like, what is it with that guy? Like it seems like he's got 9 lives in Israel. I mean, do the Israelis and even the Jewish Americans, like, do they like him? Is that another case of it's being split 50-50 by the true Judaism folks versus the Zionist folks? Like, what's the deal with this guy?
I don't know if it's 50-50. This is a very first of all, it's crazy that anybody would platform him on their podcast. It's absolutely insane. I don't know these guys very well, but it seems like they're the kind of content they make is they like the love as much as they love the hate.
Right.
So it seems like it was on their brand to have them either way. He's the longest serving prime minister the country has ever had, Benjamin Netanyahu. And what's crazy is I find that like a lot of people don't support him and they don't like him, which is insane. And people want to almost blame everything on him because the evils of Israel go far beyond Netanyahu. They existed, before Netanyahu. They'll exist beyond Netanyahu. They'll exist after Netanyahu. So many, Americans almost want to be like, American Jews, we don't care about Netanyahu. We don't like Netanyahu, but like, we got to support Israel, is their attitude without realizing but this is who they are supporting. And by supporting this man and giving their allegiance just because he is the prime minister of the country that they have, decided to worship above all other things, it's only hurting them. It's only hurting Israel. It's only hurting Jewish people. I mean, the guy's a criminal. It's crazy. They were protesting him before 10/7 happened. There were thousands of Israelis on the street because of the judicial reforms that they were trying to make then. And, even now, he keeps being very elusive with the court case that he has, which I mentioned before, bribery, fraud, breach of trust. And then, oh no, he's starting a war with Lebanon, or it's about to go, and then he's attacking Syria, which is all kind of very bizarre, but he has to go 100%. And this whole thing where, it pisses me off beyond belief to hear any American Jews be like, well, we don't like Netanyahu, but, it's like, well, that doesn't work, like that, that doesn't kind of like compute. Well, then you better be speaking out against Netanyahu. You better be standing up against him because it's crazy, which we know, of course, for years, his strategy was propping up Hamas to create division between the West Bank and Gaza. It's kind of like all blew up in his face, but people don't want to hold him accountable the way he should be held accountable, the way, hopefully, the ICC will hold him accountable as being the war criminal that he is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think people don't realize he was one of the main guys propping up Hamas for many years to drive that division between Hamas and then the Palestinian Authority, which seems to, rule the West Bank. I'll put that in air quotes, which again, I mean, Man, it's such a mess. It's such a mess. And it's such a shame because I think at the end of the day, it shouldn't be this complicated, but they make it so complicated and they make it so confusing in order for people to, not be able to truly look at what is taking place. And that, again, some people are like, oh, it's not really a genocide. It doesn't qualify as genocide. Whenever I hear that, I'm just like, you know what? Okay, let's just call it killing innocent women and children. Does it qualify as that? I think so. Because again, I've watched it on my phone. Dude, it's insane.
Yeah, you really don't want to be on the wrong side of that. That's really such a
Yeah.
ridiculous thing where people want to argue. It's not a genocide. It's not a genocide. Instead of arguing a genocide, why don't we stop the killings that are happening? Why don't we stop the starvation and stand up to it? It seems like it's just a distraction that people want to argue over it. Where it's so clearly a genocide. Every day more and more people come out, genocide scholars, Israeli people, even that it is a genocide and that are protesting against it. There are videos of Israeli teenagers that are burning up their draft papers because they don't want to participate in what they're calling a genocide. And it's just like, does it even matter? It seems like it's such a moot point to argue it's not a genocide, where it's like thousands and thousands of people have been killed. It's like hundreds of people are being killed. Starvation is happening. It is horrible what's going on. Energy should be put into ending it, not like arguing.
Yeah, arguing over the label, It's interesting. You have to dig for this, but it seems like there are a lot of protests in Tel Aviv in particular, maybe not so much in Jerusalem, but in Tel Aviv in particular, which I think is much more of a liberal, I guess, demographic versus Jerusalem, which seems very conservative. But man, there are a lot of protests and people inside Israel, whether it's protesting for, the return of the hostages. Man, these hostages get lost in all this. It's like, I don't even know how many are left. How many of those are actually military? Are there innocent civilians still being kept hostage? If they are, obviously they need to be released immediately. But Tel Aviv seems like there are a significant amount of Israelis that are just not down with this and probably share a lot of your sentiment, but we don't see that on the news. We don't see that even in the mainstream media. Thank God for social media, but I think the algorithms drown that out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't see a lot of this stuff, particularly in the Western media. And I think in Israeli media, they know a lot of these things that, that we don't know. They know about, Netanyahu propping up Hamas. They know about the extremist nature of a lot of members of the Knesset. They know a lot about the issues in the military, but they don't make it to the States. So people just don't know this. And all they know is the propaganda. It's like all they know, Hamas is bad.
Yeah.
Israel's good, return the hostages. And they don't even realize that there are like thousands of Palestinian hostages. Hell, I would consider all of Gaza to be held hostage by the state of Israel.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let me ask you this, like, could you go to Israel now, or are you persona non grata?
I don't know. I don't know. I wanted to, at one point I was trying to go there to do some work with a volunteer group in the West Bank to help, stop the settler violence, which, I feel very strongly needs to end and is a stain on Judaism. And the fact that more Jewish people aren't like speaking out against it is ridiculous. And that was a fear that I had, that what if they don't let me in? What if they won't let me in? I don't know. My father moved to Israel. He lives in Israel. So
Wow.
I don't know if maybe somehow that I could get in to go to visit him. I'm definitely not eager to go there, but I would like to visit Palestine.
Are you and your dad cool?
No.
Oh man, that's not good. Dude, I'm so sorry for you. Not sorry for you. I'm sorry that again, because I have consumed practically all of your content, and I've tried to like remix and repost your stuff. And I will tell you, whenever I post one of your stuff, it gets unbelievable reactions on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm talking like hundreds of thousands of views. thousands of comments that people, and I think I sent you, a few in text, because I'm like, hey, I want to make sure you're seeing how much support you do have out there. Because again, people like myself, I mean, we really respect the way you are. You're sacrificing so much. You've literally sacrificed your personal relationship with your father and your brother. If you didn't say any of this stuff, I'm sure you and your dad and you and your brother probably would be cool.
Well, me and my dad have always had beef, but
Okay.
I think that me and my brother would definitely be cool. And yes, my life would definitely be easier in some regards. But it's nothing that I have experienced can compare one iota to what the Palestinian people have been experiencing for decades, and what they experience all the time. And I don't even realize it a lot because like I told you, like I was doing a podcast called the American Jew Podcast. We talk a lot about anti-Semitic instances happening in America. We talk about things that are happening in Israel. The more I was, researching about Israel and, seeing more of the violations of Palestinian human rights and more, and it's kind of like, once you go down that rabbit hole and what a lot of Jewish people are calling the unlearning process, and you realize like what really happened, and you're shocked because it's like so the opposite of everything that you brought up. But and I wanted to, wake up other Jewish people and raise awareness about what's going on because we are so misled here in America. But still, like, I don't realize so much like people are seeing it or people are watching it or, people are remixing it or, people have so much to say. But yeah, I mean, I've taken hate on all sides.
I bet.
So while it is like a lot of Zionists, there are people that are on the pro-Palestinian side that have threatened me, that don't like, maybe didn't feel like I'm towing the line the way they want, or my advocacy, or some of my thoughts and free thinking. But it's again, it's like this isn't about me. This is about these people that are suffering so much, that are experiencing so much oppression that like I can't even imagine, or I'll never even know like what it's like to live in Gaza and to have that kind of fear and that kind of mindset and that kind of life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've taken a few hits, but nothing so far that I can't handle.
You're the man, dude. You're the man. That's interesting. You have pro-Palestinian people giving you shit. Like, what are they possibly yelling at you about?
It's very hard because at one point it's like, why do I even want to bring this up? Like this isn't good for the movement. Like we need unity in the movement. But I think that that's why I do, is to make sure people know that like we need to be. They want to divide us. Like we were talking about Netanyahu, propping up Hamas to divide the West Bank and Gaza, like Israel imperialists. They want to divide the pro-Palestinian advocates, so they won't be so strong, and we can't let them do that. But yeah, a very popular Jewish Palestinian advocate, he once threatened me when I wanted to go abroad and do some volunteer work. It was
Okay.
very disconcerting and almost like, to what end like are you doing this? So we can't do that. We have to be united. We're fighting a greater evil. We're fighting an evil that not only wants to ethnically cleanse and totally basically erase this people. They not only do they want to erase them, they want to claim that they don't even exist, that they
Yeah.
never did exist. And we got to be united against that to stop it, and realize that like what we think, what we want, maybe we have ideas of what it means to be an advocate, aren't what's important. What's important is bringing freedom, equality, and justice to the Palestinian people.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely, man. So are you still able to perform out? Do you have a comedy schedule I can like put in?
Only indoors from now on. No, I am, I'm trying to do more and more shows. I love comedy. Of course, it is a difficult thing. Of course, I do have, jokes in my act that have themes about freedom and equality for all, differentiating, Zionism and Judaism, anti-Semitism from anti-Zionism, stuff like that. Some spaces are open to hear these things. Many spaces are not open to hear them. It is a hard kind of thing because I'm not like this huge draw where everybody's coming to see me where I could say whatever I want to say.
Yeah.
And then there's the flip side of that where like I want to bring people to come see me, but they expect me to be saying a certain thing. And of course, I'm still trying to pursue my dreams.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have been doing comedy for decades in New York. I've been paid to perform comedy all over the world, but I'm still struggling with my career, and I was doing that prior to ever advocating for human rights.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, we'll have to see if we can get you hooked up with Dave Smith and have you maybe open up for him. I mean, he's a comedian as
I
well.
love
He's done a
Dave.
lot of advocacy
Yes.
work. You know him?
I know Dave. I've known him for years. He's a great guy, and he's been, doing incredible on all these debate shows and talking people not only as a Jewish person but just as a brilliant mind
Right.
who is really in tune with, America and the country and our history when it comes to, war and the impacts that we've had all over the world. And yeah, it's great to see him.
This episode was brought to you by Zippix nicotine toothpicks. Zip more, smoke less. Totally satisfying, discreet, and delicious. Zippix nicotine-infused toothpicks are available in 6 great flavors, each containing at least 2 milligrams of nicotine to curb those cravings. Zippix is FDA registered and proudly made in the USA. Use discount code DSD for 10% off your order at zippixtoothpicks.com. Zip more, smoke less, save 10%.